Stacy's Homestead, and today's going to be all about eggs. Right now I'm doing an egg float test. Now, I aged my eggs so they'd be easy to peel, and they're floating a bit. They're not too bad. Like, they just have a little bit of float, but they still sink and then they pop back up slowly. That's fine. They're just my oldest eggs. We're going to be hard boiling them. You want them to sink. So the older an egg gets, the more air accumulates in this because these eggs are porous. And so if it's super old, it's gonna be out of the water. It's just be floating way out of that water. And you want to toss that because it's gonna stinky. Sometimes when I go collect my eggs, I crack them on accident because I forget my basket and I put them in my shirt, in my pockets. And then these silly dogs bum rush me, dead leg me sometimes, and I accidentally, sometimes I smash them. It's just, no. And I never learned my lesson, but I can get a couple that have cracks in them, and then I get a bad egg, and y'all know how one bad egg ruins the bunch, right? So I'm pretty sure I picked out the main floaters. These are still all under the water. Barely showing, so that's good. It's gonna be horrible if I miss one, but yeah, I did crack them, the ones, just to make sure that were really floating, and they were just gross. Ugh. Anywho, we're gonna boil our water here. We got the water going, and then we're gonna pop these in the boiling water. Now I like to start the water first, because I have a problem with getting that yolk in the center. So I find that if the water's boiling first and then I put them in, it cooks them enough to keep that center. I got all the ones that floated out, but there's one. So they look like they're all floating because I have eggs under them. But I got the main floaters out, except for this one's floating up. See, that one's floating up a little bit more. See, I could separate it and then see. But yeah, they look like they're all floating, but they're not. They're just eggs underneath it. So that's floating just a little too much. So if you see the top, I mean, you want it to be like that. Just barely, If it's barely like that, you're good. But see, it's out of the water. And I have too many eggs. I'm not going to trust that one. A rotten egg is just not good. So yeah, but these ones are all good. We got all of them. So yeah, see, yep, they're all good. So let's get, this batch is ready to go. Okie dokie, so I got my water boiling, and we're going to add these eggs to the water. We're going to do a few batches at a time, and we're just going to lower them with a spoon here, and I like to stir it in there a bit because I want to try to get that yolk centered. Let's see, we'll just keep on stirring it so I can center that yolk. After I get them all in, bring it up to a boil, and I got one that just is floating too much. We're going to take that out. Put it in. After we get it up to a boil, we're going to cook it for 8 minutes and then turn it off. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. Alrighty, so while we are waiting to bring this back up to a boil after adding the eggs in, we're gonna cook it for 8 minutes and then turn the heat off, and then we're gonna put them in ice water. That way we can rapidly cool them down, and hopefully will make the peels easier to crack. Oh, I forgot to say, add vinegar to your water. That's what I forgot to do. So I'm gonna add some vinegar here to my water, and it's supposed to help make it easier as well. Oh, there we go. See, it's boiling now. I don't know if you can see. I added a dollop of vinegar. Let's start our timer for 8 minutes. There. put some vinegar in there. It's supposed to help with the peeling. I'm not sure about that, but we'll see. I always add it anyways. Okay, so while we're got that time for 8 minutes, we got our ice water ready, and then I'll bring you back after I get them in the ice water. Okie dokie. Okie dokie. So we got our eggs boiled, and we're gonna add them to the ice cold water that we prepared and let them cool down. I drained the hot water out and then filled it with water to cool them first before I add them here. So that way it doesn't make my ice water boiling, you know? And these are old eggs, so I'm hoping they peel easy. Okay, here's a quick lesson on how to peel eggs. So what you do is you get your eggs and then you roll them around. Then you start peeling. So it's easier if you peel this little top flat part. Okay, and see where it has more, the yolk is onto one side more than the other. So you want to start peeling on this side, that way you don't rip into the yolk, and because there's probably just a thin white layer right here. So sometimes that yolk doesn't get completely centered, and so when you do that, you want to peel the membrane. There's a membrane under here. You want to peel off. Okay, and then you put water. So you peel it in water and it'll slip right off. It's probably best to do a bowl of water, because then you're not wasting water. But it just peels right off without ripping your egg up. See? And then you didn't mess that membrane up because you started peeling it from this side where it was thicker. And I'll show you one in a bowl of water. So we'll get a small bowl of water, because it's probably, so we have a small bowl of water. That way you're not wasting water. Okay. And this is how it's probably better to do it. So we'll get an egg, roll it around on both sides. So there's a big rounded side and a pointy side. You want to start at the bottom. Do you roll it on the big side so you can see which way to peel? Okay. So see this one, the yolk went more to one side, so we want to start on this side and put it in the water. So we get it, kind of squeeze it around in the water. So you want to get, I'm doing this one-handed by the way, that's how easy it is. So you want to get it under the membrane. There's a thin membrane under here. See, and it makes it smooth. Remember to start on the side that's more meaty so you don't accidentally expose your yolk. And then squeeze it in there and see. Be careful because sometimes it sticks on that yolk part, and see the thin layer is covering still the yolk part, because this one the yolk went sideways. Sometimes they do that, but it's beautiful. You can pickle that. And that's how you peel eggs. Also, an interesting thing about eggs is, so depending on the age of your egg is where the yolk is going to be when you hard boil, because they float in a certain direction depending on how old they are. So store-bought eggs are usually pretty old, and so you'll get your eggs centered So meaning they're floating straight up and down because there's an air pocket in the top of the egg right here. Let me show you. So there's an air pocket right here, and as it gets exposed to air, it's porous, so it'll suck in air and it will like create a bobbing effect. So when they're very, very fresh, they just sink. Like, they just sink straight to the bottom. And then as they age, they'll float sideways a bit. And so they're like a couple weeks old, they're still like kind of sideways. And so you'll get your egg yolk to the side. But once they get older, just right, they pop up this way. And that's how you'll get your yolk in the center. But you don't want it too old where it's popped up out of the water, because that means it's a dud. It's nasty and it's gross. You want it this way, kind of, but still under the water. So that's what I figured out through experimentation, at least. And if anything, I just stir it and stir it and stir it and stir it. I'll stir the egg in the water, trying to keep the eggs upright while it cooks. So that's the trick I do too. So if you have a couple week old eggs and it's floating on its side, try to get it, like when you put it in boiling water, and spin it and try to get it to stay upright and long enough for it to cook and center that yolk in the center. If that matters to you, you know, because sometimes it's hard to peel a perfect egg when the yolk is to the side. So this one is to the side, but you have to do it just right to keep that membrane over it if you don't want that yolk exposed. So a little trick about the centering the egg yolk. But yeah, so I mean, I tend to not be patient enough to wait till it's floating up and down straight. So I'll just spin it, and try to get it centered in the hot water. We'll stir it and stir it and stir it, you know what I mean? So there's some advice on that. And that's about peeling eggs.